Let's call the special meeting of the Zoning Commission, July 25th to order. We have, Kevin Gray is not going to be here. Jackie, you serve for Kevin, please.
Okay.
And Diane, I think, is coming. But Tucker,
Yes,
you're a Terriffill person. You can sit for Diane,
sure. Sure thing.
right?
Yes.
Okay, and if she shows up, then she replaces you.
Okay.
Okay. The first order of business, and the only order of business, is a special meeting, is application ZC 22-18 of the Simsbury Zoning Commission. George McGregor applicant, application for a text amendment to section 3.5 of the Simsbury zoning regulations regarding accessory dwelling units, amendment for the purpose of adopting accessory dwelling unit regulations. So, first thing in the public hearing is, does anybody in the commission wish to say anything? Hearing none, I will open it up to the public. Does anyone in the public care to speak to this application?
Dave, at what point can I participate in anything, just as public hearing as an audience
Correct.
member? Thanks.
Correct. Good evening. We have opened the public hearing, and we're asking residents if they want to address us with respect to this application, which is for amending our zoning regulations governing accessory dwelling units.
Anyone?
Okay. All right. We're going for the record, I think.
All right. Amazing. That's it?
Once Kevin had a meeting that went 7 minutes, I think.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, just as staff, let me just get a couple things on the record.
Okay.
That we have, of course, noticed this properly. It's a text amendment, so we send the application to the Capital Region Council of Governments as well as all of our adjacent towns. So that has been done. The Planning Commission also reviewed this application at their July meeting.
June meeting,
June
second meeting in June.
28th, second, we didn't have July meeting. So they forwarded you a positive referral finding consistency with the plan of conservation and development. Your planning staff finds the text amendment is also consistent with the PACD and the housing goals that are found in Chapter 10. Just for the record, in front of you tonight, you don't have your tablets, so you have the agenda. You do have the strike-through version and the clean version, as well as a draft motion, and that was all placed in your Dropbox as well as on the town website in the agenda packet. You did receive one. We received one email late today, 4:58 today, from Mr. Rick Rush, and I provided that email to you, and I also make that part of the record.
Okay. Mr. Rush would like us to adopt the state regulations, but we've already opted out of the state. This is zoning commission.
Of course, staff is happy to answer the questions and review the changes. These changes really were arrived at after several meetings among your zoning commission, where you arrived at consensus. Essentially, the primary difference, the primary change is that you updated the allowable area.
Yep.
And that is now the greater of 600 square feet, or 30% of the primary residence. That actually exceeds the state number.
Right.
It's more permissive.
Yep.
And you also removed references to utility preferences.
Yep.
There are none now. You removed requirements for any internal passageway or connections. The ordinances, the regulations are silent on that. And then you also added an additional 10% of allowable square footage for units that meet accessibility standards as determined by the town building official. So that is something different and not contained in the state legislation.
Thank you. Would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
What, did Melissa want to speak?
Pardon?
No. Oh, okay.
For the public hearing still, before you close it?
Of course.
Okay. I've never spoken up public.
You can see what it feels like, Wendy.
Let's figure out, see what it's like back here.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Wendy Max Davis. I'm the first selectman in Simsbury, but I'm here as a resident. I live on 16 Hunting Ridge Drive. I've been following the ADU for the last couple of years, and as a member of the Board of Selectmen, also, as the public knows, that the Board of Selectmen has to opt out in order to not take on the state regs, just like the zoning board does. So that is going to come to the Board of Selectmen on a future agenda. And that was kind of why I was here tonight. I was hoping to hear more from the public, so it's disappointing that there is no one here tonight. A couple things I just want to mention is I'm happy to see the internal doorway regulation taken away. I'm also happy to see that the electricity change has been made. I do have questions, which you don't have to answer to the public audience, on why we would go over the 1,000 square feet. Recently I went to a CCM meeting and there was AARP recommendations, and they basically said that 1,000 square feet was plenty for an ADU, and that does provide a lot of space, but I haven't done any analysis on the why, so I'm just putting that out there as a question. And I guess the ADU compliance I had heard about in your meeting to expand it by 10%. I know there were questions on how do you prove that it's ADU usage only. ADA.
Compliance,
sorry.
it's
I'm sorry,
okay.
ADA. But I just wanted to comment that I think it's, good that, you guys are making some changes to the regulations, and now it's gonna come to the Board of Selectmen at some point in time in the future. So that's my public audience.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Your testimony. Okay. Any further comments from the public?
I have a question, Mr. Chair. Just to make sure I understand the way this meeting's working. We close public hearings, then we're going to have our discussion afterward. We're not closing the meeting at the end of it.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
Yes. Motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion. Close the public hearing.
Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It carries. 6-0. 6? Yes. Okay. Now we can address the business application ZC 2218 of the zoning commission. We have a draft motion.
Moved. The zoning commission approves ZC 22-18, an application for the text amendment to section 3.5 of the Simsbury zoning regulations regarding accessory dwelling units, based upon a finding that the text amendment is consistent with the plan of conservation and development, specifically a housing goal, page 89, maintain and enhance the safe, healthful, aesthetic, and distinctive living environment in Simsbury, while providing for a range of housing choices for people of all ages and economic. .2.a, 3, page 90, provide for appropriately scaled accessory dwelling apartments within or attached to single-family dwellings. The draft text amendment is dated June 13th, 2022, and effective August 10th, 2022.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second. All right. Diane? Okay, discussion.
I wanted to talk about the parking requirement. So I was looking at it, and we're not allowing for an additional parking lot to be built specifically for the ADU, but we do require that there be one designated parking space for that ADU. I'm wondering why that is necessary to. I'm not sure I understand why that's absolutely necessary to put in here. If the driveway already exists, are we going to say that a driveway is just too small to support that many people? I guess I don't understand why we would have that kind of language in there. We already require parking in certain areas. Do we really need or is there a width requirement or a length requirement for this parking now? That's what I don't quite understand. If anyone has any ideas on that.
So let me try to answer that. So I think the way we look at it is you have, you've got a residential unit.
Right.
Right. So with this, we're adding an additional residential unit. So essentially, an additional household, if you will.
Sure.
So that additional household may have additional vehicles.
Right.
And so we would look to see, because obviously you approve, the zoning commission would approve that application by site plan review. If it was an attached structure, you'd approve it by site plan and special exception review. So we would look to make sure that there was a place to park that vehicle or two vehicles.
Right.
If there were two vehicles. So, I mean, the minimum is one. So we're asking for an additional space. And so, yes, we would
Right.
review the driveway and the parking area to make sure that you could accommodate additional parking spaces.
But most of these houses already have a minimum, so they have the minimum one parking space already, I'm saying.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. And
And
a lot
also
of,
remember that these ADUs, while the initial intention was as an in-law apartment and you'd know who was there, the fact is that they may be rented in the future.
right.
And so you want to make sure that a unit that's available for rental has a parking place with it.
Okay. So we're not so much mandating that people expand their parking areas, just that we might not allow one to be built if we don't find that there's at least two parking spaces for it.
Right.
The regulation would certainly not mandate the construction of additional spaces.
Right.
You know, the great majority of single-family homes have a garage,
Right.
so 1, 2, 3, so
Sure.
4 spaces sometimes. Just want to make sure that we can park that new vehicle in the new household on the location or at the site.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're only restricting a new curb cut. So new access. Otherwise, I think that we're not restricting, like you can add more paving or you can.
Sure. Yeah, you couldn't just make an entirely separate
curb-
new
like a
piece
new
of parking.
curb
Correct.
driveway or something.
Correct.
Right, so.
And then finally, I would just say that the parking issue is, you know, at one is almost never a barrier in my experience.
Yeah.
Right.
To the construction or the addition of an accessory.
Okay.
Well, it's also a critical element that we need to be as certain as we can be that we're not encouraging on-street parking.
Yes, I agree.
And if you let people fill the house with cars and there's no spot, then where are they gonna park? In the road.
Right.
So if we require reserving one spot, so they don't park in the road, and they don't have an issue theoretically when it was approved. The other thing I would like to point out, though, is there was a question about the incentive that we built into this for people to design for future use by handicapped folks, that there's an opportunity to make the place a little bit bigger to accommodate that the language of the regulation calls for the building official to make the determination as to whether the plans adequately are consistent with the ADA and its goals of defining space adjustments that need to be made for handicaps. So if the building official says it's there, then we're gonna say it's there. That's the future of this thing. But it's an objective expert who will be looking at it, not the members of the commission who know
Right.
very little about the ADA.
Sure. Okay.
Other comments? None?
Nope.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Carries 6-0. Thanks, everybody.
Excellent.
Oh, really?
Okay. We need a motion to adjourn because we can do no other business.
Second.
Where did we
Second by
We're not gonna.
Jackie. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah, he's been over there for a long
Abstain.
time. He's got some health
Motion to
issues now.
adjourn carries 6-0. We're on the roll tonight.